Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Happy Trails Hiking. I have a very special show for you today, and if you can tell, I have April with Minivan Adventures with me. Hi, April. How are you?
Hi, Kay.
All right, so we're going to talk about Yellowstone and Grand Teton today, and I'm super excited.
I'm excited too.
This is April's idea. She contacted me, a month ago and said, hey, we need to talk about compare and contrast on our trips from Yellowstone and Grand Teton. I was like, I'll talk about that anytime. So, yeah, I'm very excited about it. And I'm sure we're going to have folks trickling in the room here any second. But I want you to tell us, April, about your family and how they vacation. What's the demographic and things like that for us?
Okay, so we are a family of 5. It's my husband and myself. And then we have one who is a high school senior, will be graduating, going off to college this year. Mm-hmm. And then we have 2 smaller ones. One is in 5th grade and one is in 2nd grade. And we just recently went on our last big trip was in the summer, and we went to Yellowstone and Grand Teton and a ton of other places.
Awesome. And for those of you who might not be familiar with Happy Trails Hiking, I'm Kay, and my husband and Matt and I travel around to our national parks, and it's just the 2 of us most of the time. Sometimes we have my sister along with us or his dad or various other family members, but no kids usually. So, that's what we do. So we're going to do a compare contrast of couples travel and then larger family travel. So we do have lots of people in the room, and I do want to say hello to those folks and make sure that they are acknowledged, as well as folks, if you are watching now and have not ever been on a live show for YouTube, you can find the live chat right underneath our video faces. And you can also, if you're on your mobile device, it should be right underneath our faces, or it will be on the side of the computer. So feel free to join in the chat. If you don't have a Google account, you'll have to create a Google account and then come back. If you'd like to just listen and leave questions in the comments below, we'll be happy to answer those afterwards as well. So, April, we've got a huge room here today.
Wow.
So Matt Cook, Oregon stopped by earlier, but I don't think he's still here. So Matt, if you're here, type something intelligent into the chat, please. Lori Bryant is here, as well as Desmond Donders. ATJH Travels is here. Marty's Crew, Our Family Adventures, is here. Desmond's is saying hello to April. Gemma's Journey Grace is here, as well as Our Haunted Travels Panic D. And those folks are hanging out in the chat. If you guys have questions for us as we go along, please feel free to ask. We're not exactly going to ask questions. We're just going to talk about our experiences. And so one of the things I always find important is to find out what is your travel goals when you go on vacation. Is it to relax and lay on the beach, or just, chill out in bars, or, whatever. So what is your family's goal, April, when you guys go on vacation?
Well, I would say our travel style is go, 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 because we want, how often do we make it to Yellowstone? This is my 2nd time ever to Yellowstone, and the last time was about over 25 years ago. So,
oh, wow.
So we so rarely make it to those areas of the country when we want to see everything we possibly can. So our travel style is go, go, go. Our travel purpose is to create these great, meaningful experiences with our children and to create moments that we're going to remember and cherish.
Awesome. And we travel probably the same way. We want to see as much as possible in the amount of time that we have, because vacation is priceless.
Right. It really is.
Our time together is just as priceless as we can be. We also have Food Forest Permaculture is here. Howie, welcome to the room, as well as Game Cam Wildlife Recon, which I know his name is Darren. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for coming. And Computer Chick Productions is here. Says, I take one trip every summer. I went to Yellowstone last summer with my son to make memories, as well as Rocky Mountains, and for my son to see history. We're going to talk about that just a little bit. And she also says, this summer is a trip to Grand Canyon. Excellent. I've been
Nice.
So that is very fun. One thing for folks that are traveling to national parks, Matt and I always get, oops, it's upside down, a America the Beautiful pass. It's an annual pass, and you buy it and you can get into Yellowstone and Grand Teton and the Grand Canyon and all of our national park sites for one price. This is $80 and it covers everyone in your car. You had a different experience, and I wanted you to share that, April.
Yeah, last summer was we waited intentionally to do this big Yellowstone trip for last summer because my fifth grader was a fourth grader then. And if you know about the national program, there's a national federal program called, I believe it's called Every Kid in a Park. And basically their fourth grade year, they get a park pass, and they and whoever's traveling with them, so whoever's in the car with them, gets into pretty much every national park, national monument, national historic site for free with this park pass. And you just go online, sign up. My son was so happy. He had a card similar to yours. It looks a little different.
Sure.
But we would drive up to the little ranger station at the entryway, and he'd flash his card, and they would make a big fuss over him. And he thought he was a rock star, and it was a really cool experience. And it saved us a lot of money.
That is awesome. And for fourth graders, it's absolutely free.
Right.
But this does cost $80 a year. So
Right.
It's totally worth it, especially if you travel to parks like Matt and I do. So that's something that I do want to say here at the very, very beginning. And Matt Cook, Oregon is here, and he is saying intelligent things. Hello.
Well, hello, Matt.
It's good to see you. We saw your comment before, which if for those of you who haven't scrolled up in the chat, it was a lot of letters. It's like he fell on the keyboard, but we did want to say hello. All right, so I took a road trip. I've taken several trips to Yellowstone, Grand Teton, or the greater Yellowstone area, and last summer was our sixth trip. And it's just one of our favorite places. And Matt and I try to support the greater Yellowstone ecosystem as much as we possibly can. But so that's our Yellowstone experience. And the first time I went to Yellowstone was back in 2006. It was our second family vacation. So
Nice.
yes.
Yeah, my first time was like in 92 or 93. So a long time ago. And I was 16. And I was so not appreciative of it. And now I look back and I think, oh, why did I not pay attention to the cool stuff here?
Right.
Well, I'm glad that my children's experience was a little bit different.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about was our experience in Grand Teton National Park. And I guess the thing that stands out to me about Grand Teton that I didn't realize before I spent time in the parks was that they had, so many lakes. The mountains are the highlight. You can drive by on that outer highway and see the mountains and go, oh, they're beautiful. But the glacial lakes are really a story there. So can you talk about your experience, and we'll do a little compare and contrast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, our first experience, we started off at Jenny Lake. It's probably I would guess the busiest area of the park.
I would say so.
So we made that our very first stop so that we did not get stuck in the crowds, and we were able to find parking. I believe you actually hiked around the lake, whereas we took the ferry across the lake. We were hiking with children, and children will only hike so many miles.
Yes.
So we took the ferry across so we could make sure to hike to the things that we wanted to see. And then we'd hiked maybe 2.5 miles on the other side. And we saw the only accessible waterfall in Grand Teton. And we also saw Inspiration Point, which is very high up in the air.
Yes.
And
that's
we would have liked to have hiked around, but we didn't have that luxury.
That is on the on our thumbnail, right? Is your kids
Yes.
Inspiration Point. Yeah.
Yep. That's the thumbnail, was my 3 children looking out over Inspiration Point. One of my kids said that was his favorite part of Grand Teton, was making it to Inspiration Point.
That's very fun. I did put a link to your blog about your Hidden Falls hike in the chat. So if people want to check that out, please go ahead and click that link. And that'll pull up another tab for you. So yeah, we went to Jenny Lake, and we've had different experiences at Jenny Lake. Mm-hmm. There's a one-way road that goes right past Jenny Lake. And the very first time we were in the greater Yellowstone Grand Teton area, we actually drove that road and didn't do any hiking. We were on a road trip, and it was one of those, we got to get to our hotel and we're late and we did too much stuff over here. And anyway, so we drove, and it was cold. It was the end of May, and it had snowed that day. But we got off at one of the pullouts and just took a few pictures around Jenny Lake and didn't realize how busy it was and didn't hardly even stop. But when we were there in 2013 with our family, so my cousin and my sister and Matt's dad went with us, and we did a hike around Jenny Lake, and we couldn't even hardly get places to park, and we had 2 vehicles, and we parked alongside the road, and then we hiked around part of the way around Jenny Lake, and there was just so many people, and I was like, I will never do this again. I will never do this again. So yeah, it's Matt was like, no, we really need to go back and do that Jenny Lake hike again. So back in 2018, when we did our Rockies road trip, they were doing construction on Jenny Lake Visitor Center. And I don't even know if they were still doing it last year or not, because we didn't even go last summer, but couldn't park anywhere. They had instead of the visitor center, they had a trailer parked outside where the visitor center was supposed to be.
Well, that's not the same.
Oh yeah, not the same at all. And yeah, it was just so crowded. I just couldn't do it. So we went in search of other lakes. And yeah, it was, we found Phelps Lake and John D. Rockefeller Preserve. And that was fairly fun. And you can see one of our videos on our Rockies road trip playlist on that. I have some pictures if anybody wants to see them. But yeah, we hiked around Phelps Lake and saw very few people. And John D. Rockefeller Preserve is one of those pro tips. If you ever go back, they only allow 50 cars in the parking lot at a time. And,
that's nice.
And the rangers stand there, and they let you into the parking lot once somebody leaves. So if every car has 4 people in it, you have 200 folks there. That's right. Yeah, 200 folks. Which not every car has 4 people in it, but yeah, it was just such a more calm experience, I would say. And we loved it. So what about other lakes that you found in Grand Teton?
The only other lake we visited was maybe I won't pronounce it right, but it was like Schwabacker's Landing.
Schwabacker's, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I heard it's a great place to find moose in the dawn or in the dusk, but we were there in the midday, so no moose for us. But it's a really cool place to see the mountains reflected in the water. It's you can take a very short walk, and you can come across a beaver pond, which the kids thought was cool to see, the great big beaver dam. Mm-hmm. And it was a little buggy, but it wasn't crowded, which was the nicest part.
Computer Chick Productions was talking about the Junior Ranger program. Do you have your kids do the Junior Ranger program?
Yes. Yeah. My kids are obsessed with the Junior Ranger program.
Yeah.
They got so many badges on this last trip because not only did we do Yellowstone and Grand Teton, but we went to Craters of the Moon, Mount Rushmore, Badlands, Missile Man. So they came home with 5 different badges from each national park site. Plus they called it the Junior Scout program over at Crazy Horse.
Oh, neat. That's cool. Game Cam Wildlife Recon said we didn't do Jenny Lake. It was racing and we were tired from 8 prior days in Yellowstone. Yes. And Flack Fam is here. Hello. And Yankee said that he was going to send some folks. So thank you for coming and hope you enjoy the show. This is April from Minivan Adventures, and we are talking about Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and we've just covered our Grand Teton lakes. The other thing, oh, you mentioned buggy earlier. We went to Two Ocean Lake, and it's one of those lakes that's out away from the mountains. You get grand views of the mountains. It was beautiful, but there were so many bugs. I was like, we need some more people to show up so that they'll bite somebody else other than me. It was bad. It was bad, but yes. But yes, so what did I say? Two Ocean Lake it's really pretty. But yeah, that was a neat place to be. You also wanted to mention Mormon Row, and you took us to Mormon Row. So tell me about Mormon Row with your kids.
First, can we tell them, or maybe I should tell them what you said to me? I said, oh, we should talk about Mormon Row because it's this cool historic place and the adults would love it, but my kids were obsessed with the outhouse. And do you remember what you said?
Yes, in the video, because I got it on video. I was like, that is called the pink house because there's a pink house right there. And then I scan across and I'm like, and that is called the outhouse.
Yes, and that's the part that my kids was most impressed with. You and my kids would get along so well. So my kids took pictures of the outhouse. They thought that was awesome. They didn't care as much about the barn, even though it's the most photographed barn in all of Wyoming.
Right.
It's a cool historic area. The other thing that they really, really liked about Mormon Row was there was huge holes in the ground from ground squirrels. And they thought that was the coolest thing. I gave them each their own camera because when we stopped someplace where I think that might be a little boring for them, I usually hand each kid a camera and let them snap pictures, and that keeps them more engaged.
Sure.
And so we have so many pictures of holes in the ground and an outhouse.
Well, there you go. You gotta have pictures of the holes. And Matt Cook, Oregon asked if I had seen the wildlife migration of Atlas of Yellowstone. And no, I haven't actually. I've seen the pronghorns running, but I haven't been there during like migration periods because it's always been really hot when we've been there pretty much. Rachel Rawson is here. So hello, Rachel. It is good to see you. And Computer Chick Production says, one thing my son likes to do on trips is to capture. He has a generic version of the GoPro. And yeah, you get to see the experience from his eyes, kind of like your kids' pictures that they took. So let's see. Mormon Row, yes, I visited twice, once at sunrise and once at sunset. And so we got different views both times. Sunset,
and your pictures are gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sunset was less busy than sunrise because you get pictures like that one at sunrise where the sun is actually hitting the barns and then lighting up the mountains behind it. So that's like the time to go and photograph it. It was really funny that we had a family pull up right behind us. It was an all-adult kids family, and they were going to have family Christmas card pictures. So I have a family in my time lapse. It was really fun, but that's all right. It's all good. All right. The other thing you wanted to talk about was Grand Prismatic. So let's move north and head into Yellowstone now.
Yes. Let's do that.
So Grand Prismatic Hot Springs is the largest hot spring in the U.S., contiguous 48. And it's in Midway Geyser Basin. So do you want to tell me about your thoughts on Midway Geyser Basin and Grand Prismatic?
Sure. One thing you might want to know if you go there is there's two different ways to view the Grand Prismatic. There's an overlook if you actually don't park at the Midway Basin parking lot, but you park at the parking lot for, I believe it's called Berry Falls Trail.
Yep.
Exactly. You can take the trail just a short ways, not the whole way, it leads up to an overlook, and it looks right down onto Grand Prismatic, and that is the best way to see all of the colors of Grand Prismatic. Because the other time you're right up close, so you see it up close and you can't get the full effect of
totally
the color.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let me see if I can find.
Mhm.
So when we went with the Yellowstone Association, so we went on a program called Trails Through Yellowstone back in 2010. And that was before we were YouTubing. I got my first digital camera that summer. It was pretty funny. But anyway, we went to Yellowstone, did Trails Through Yellowstone, and they actually didn't have the official overlook, but there was a super secret way to go. And so we went to the super secret overlook and got great pictures of Grand Prismatic then. And it used to be the most coveted picture in Yellowstone.
Right.
That the rangers would protect. It was a protected site. Flack Fam says, we love Yellowstone. We love it too. I'd go back in a heartbeat. Matt was talking this morning. He was like, oh, he saw my pictures up and was like, oh, can we go back today? And I was like, not today, but Saturday we can.
There you go.
So, yeah. So we went to the super secret way up there, which is now, they decided that they needed to build an overlook so that people could see it. I'm trying to pull up the picture. It's just not working. So I have a Phelps Lake picture, but I don't have that picture now. I should have done a little better getting those pictures up and ready. But what time of day did you go?
I knew from someone had told me it's the busiest place there, one of the busiest places, or one of the busiest places with the smallest parking lots.
Oh, yes.
For how crowded it gets. So we went there very first thing in the morning. And I wonder if our pictures might have been better later in the day because there was an excessive amount of steam, I felt like.
Okay,
but we didn't have any crowds. We didn't have any trouble getting parking. The hiking trail to the overlook wasn't bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we ended up at the overlook at we went to the Basin first and walked along the boardwalk. Got some gorgeous pictures of the colors and things in the morning. But we went to the overlook, I guess it was about 9:30, and we got that picture. So wasn't too disappointed with that. I decided that it's better in the evening, actually. You get a richer color because the sun is on the other side. So
right.
Let's see if I can do this. In the morning, the sun is coming from this direction over here. In the afternoon, it's coming from this direction. And when it gets later in the afternoon, now that they have the parking lot and the overlook, it's much easier to see in the afternoon than it is during the morning time. But we went first thing in the morning as well. It was the very first thing we did even before getting breakfast. So we went from the campsite straight to Grand Prismatic.
That's what we did too. And then we drove by there later and people were parking the road. It was crazy.
Yep. One of the things that you had mentioned, and I want to mention, is that it's a busy place, but the boardwalk has no railings.
Right.
It gives you
watch your children carefully.
Yes, and don't get off the boardwalk.
And hang on to your hat. I don't know how many hats have blown off people's heads, but you see hats all over.
Yes. And Flack Fam says early is always better for crowds, more animals out in the morning as well, too. Yes, if you want to do some wildlife viewing, it's good to do that early in the morning. But always remember to view wildlife responsibly, and it's their home, not yours. Yeah, I always have to say that. Sorry. Not that Flack Fam would have done anything wrong. Let's see. So yes, go see both sides. There's Midway, Geyser Basin, and then there is the Fairy Falls hike. And in our video from last week, we actually covered Fairy Falls again as one of our national park waterfalls that we've been to. And then if you keep going on the Fairy Falls hike, you can get to Imperial Geyser. Just saying, it's really cool. I guess I brought it up quickly, but before we go much further, where did you guys stay when you traveled to Yellowstone?
Oh, sure. We stayed 2 nights near Yellowstone. The first time we stayed at West Yellowstone, which is near the west entrance, and we found the most affordable hotel that we could find there. And it was really just a place to sleep for us because we had had such a full day and it was so late in the evening. We grabbed some fast food, I think,
Mhm.
that day. We slept and then we got up super early the next morning so we could hit all the sites early in the morning. So
Okay.
the second time we stayed by the north entrance in Gardner.
Mm,
And again, it was mostly a place to sleep, but it was such a cool location because they have the great big arch over the north entrance, and
yes.
the town itself is adorable. And we were right on the river, and we had these cool river views from our hotel.
Very pretty. Yeah, Gardner's a very pretty place right on the Yellowstone River and just outside the north
Mhm.
entrance.
We were so impressed.
Yeah, hmm, yeah, it's a really cool place. So Matt and I have done lots of different things.
Mhm.
If you watch our channel fairly often, you'll know that when we travel, we try to stay inside the parks, and that can get very expensive. Like I can't imagine taking a family of 5 and
Right.
trying to stay in the lodges at the parks.
Mhm.
Supply and demand. And people will pay the price for those hotel rooms, so they do that. They charge a lot for them. So Matt and I've stayed there at Mammoth Hot Springs, Grant Village. We stayed in the lodge at Old Faithful. There's not just the inn, there's the Old Faithful Lodge. And there's also the Snow Lodge. So when we went in December, we stayed at the Old Faithful Snow Lodge as well. And let's see. We've also camped because we got, well, on our Rockies road trip, I was like, we can't afford to stay, you know, we had 6 nights in Yellowstone. We can't afford to spend 6 nights at
Right.
$200 a night. That's just insane. So, yeah, we went, let's see, we went to Yellowstone and we camped at the Madison campground and
Mhm.
we camped at the Canyon campground. They were both on the Madison's on the west side at the west entrance of Yellowstone, and then the Canyon campground's on the east side. So we got both sides of the parks there. So
Yeah,
and
and when you go to the park, you want to choose your side carefully because it's a big. I don't think people realize just how big of a park it is and how long it takes to get from one side to another side.
I agree. I agree. Computer Chick Production says one thing about Yellowstone is getting up and seeing Old Faithful, as well as to go to Mammoth Hot Springs. That was a great lead in, and she didn't even know it. Thank you so much for saying that. And Food Forest Permaculture, have a wonderful day. And thank you for coming, Howie. I appreciate it. We are probably going to go a little bit long. There's so much to cover here, but let's talk about your experience at the Old Faithful area, April.
Yes, Old Faithful is probably our most memorable experience there. Not only did we get to see Old Faithful blow 3 times because we were there for so long, it blew right when we first got there, and then we wandered, we saw it again, and then it blew one more time right before we left. So that was really neat to see Old Faithful itself. But also, you get to walk around, and there's so many geysers in the area, and they just go off at random times. We happened to be walking by the Lions group, and one of the bigger geysers out there went off, and we were laughing at some people because they got rained on, and then the wind shifted and it rained on us.
Guys,
So then we were the ones getting laughed at. But what a cool memory for my kids.
Yeah.
For us. But that's what my kids still tell people. They talk about the wildlife and they talk about when we got rained on by a geyser. So people, I think a lot of people go and watch Old Faithful and they miss some of the other things. And I think that's a big mistake.
The Old Faithful area. Oh, there's so much to see. When we went in 2013, I was like, all right, we're getting up early. I made my father-in-law, my cousin, and my sister. Well, and Matt always gets up early, but because I tell him it's going to be fun. But we got up super early, grabbed to-go breakfast, the granola bars and donuts and whatever, and took off walking out to Morning Glory Pool. And I don't know if you guys saw Morning Glory Pool, but it's right at the end of the of the pavement. So there's a paved walkway
Right.
that goes out from Old Faithful Inn.
Yes.
And it's right at the end of that pavement. And we walked clear out there and then kept going out to Biscuit Basin. And we had two cars, fortunately. So we took one car and drove the big car out there, and then we could drive everybody back. But it's just amazing and beautiful to see the hot springs and the geysers all by yourself. That morning, I got to see Old Faithful go off, and I was the only one there.
Ooh, how cool is that? Because there was a lot of people there when we were there.
Oh, it was amazing. It was just like, I could just be quiet and just listen to the geyser go off. There wasn't anybody there. It was beautiful, beautiful. I want to say hello to the Susie channel. Hello. She says, I love Old Faithful. Been there many times. The first time was in Yellowstone, was after the huge fires in 88. The devastation was unbelievable. And yes, 63% of the park is burned. And, the one thing that I have learned about that is that fires are so important to our ecosystem. And, we learned that with the very unfortunate fires over in Great Smoky Mountains a few years ago. They hadn't had fires there in a really long time. And so the fires really took a toll on the area, and several lives were lost then. But anyway, yes, Lori Bryant went with me on that Morning Glory pool hike, and she said, Matt and I left earlier to shuttle the vehicles. Exactly. I happened to get to see Old Faithful go off, and she had to drive vehicles, but that's okay. You wanted to talk about ice cream.
Oh,
I had
they have ice cream there. We don't buy a lot of treats on our trips, but that was one of the treats that we did. And the Old Faithful Inn itself is really cool. I know you've got a lot more experience with the Old Faithful Inn than we do, but I wanted to say that our kids really enjoyed it in there, because not only does it kind of have a cuckoo clock kind of feel on the inside of it, and I'm sure you can talk more about that, but before we went on this trip, we watched it was like a 1963 Disney movie called Yellowstone Cubs.
Okay.
It shows all sorts of things you should not do about feeding bears. Never, ever feed bears. Right. But it was really cute because it follows these cubs through. And one of the things that the cubs do is they go into the Old Faithful Inn and they raid the kitchen and they eat all the food in the Old Faithful Inn. So my kids were so pleased. They're like, this is the building that the bears went in.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, it does kind of feel like being in a cuckoo clock. Especially with the, 3-story clock that it has in it. This is just a random picture that I just grabbed. But this is from the 3rd floor, and everyone can get to the 3rd floor of the Old Faithful Inn. When we were camping, we got to the Old Faithful Inn, and they have a bar right next to the restaurant that you have to have reservations for, but they have it's a lounge. And you don't have to be 21 to go in, I don't think. But we just go in there, we grab an appetizer and a drink, and we sit there. Well, we'd been camping for a few days, and down in Grand Teton, there are no showers at Grovant Campground. And so we were like, all right, we're going to go into the restaurant, grab a drink. And we told the waiter, the bartender, that, we'd been camping for a few days, and we were happy to actually have, food and service, somebody serving us. And he was like, we have showers here. And we're like, oh, no, is it that bad? He was like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But these are the best showers. So 3rd floor showers in the Old Faithful Inn. Just recommendation. But
look at you with the hot tips.
I know. Well, you go 6 times and you figure out a few things, I think. But the other thing that I want to give you a tip for,
yes,
the next time you plan to go, and maybe Computer Chick Productions, the next time you plan to go, plan to go to the top of Old Faithful Inn. It's amazing. And you can help with the flag lowering. And yes.
Yeah, the kids would love that.
Yes. Matt was an Eagle Scout, or is an Eagle Scout, and loved getting to help fold the American flag. And he says it was one of the highlights of his trip. And so you get once a day, the bellhop goes up to the top of the Old Faithful Inn and takes people with them to help lower the flags. We actually got up there about 15 minutes before Old Faithful Geyser went off. So I got to see Old Faithful Geyser from the top of Old Faithful Inn. And we have a video of this on our channel. And it's truly, it was a special time. It was just a special time. And it was really fun. And I would recommend that for anyone with kids. And it's a free tour. Mm-hmm. And all you got to do is call the bellhop station. You can't register for it online. You need to call the bellhop station at the Old Faithful Inn and say you want to go on the flag lowering tour. So
very cool. You need to write all these hot tips down for people to access somewhere.
Well, it's in the video. Did I do that well?
You did.
I think
you did it very well.
Write a blog on it. I will check and make sure. I could probably write a blog on it too, but then people would just read the tips and not watch the video, and I get paid for the video.
True.
You know. Let's see. Computer Chick Adventures says my son loved seeing Old Faithful. We stayed and we saw the water from the geyser flow past under the walkway, and he thought it was really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that some people, even adults, forget that water is still going. I mean, it's recycling itself all the time. And let's see. Also, another note, in West Yellowstone, Montana, there's a small museum that for a donation, you can walk around and catch a history. And you have a video on that. Well, thank you very much. That's cool. There's a lot of places that you can get the history of Yellowstone. I recommend, and I know that you recommend, stopping in at the visitor centers when you go places. Let's see. I like ranger programs, and that's one of my favorite things to do is to get in on those ranger programs, either early in the morning or late in the evening. And one of the things that you and I talked about before we went on the air is when to go places. And Matt and I went to see Artist Point over and see the lower falls of the Yellowstone River in the Grand Canyon. And we were the only ones there at 7 a.m. You could actually
had the same experience.
Yeah, you could actually hear the waterfall. We did finally have some people show up, and they could take our picture in front of the waterfall at Artist Point. So that was really, really cool. And that was neat. And Flack Fam is saying, what a great memory. Thank you. Yes. And Rachel Russell wanted to know how far Yellowstone is for me. It's a 2-day drive. So 1,000 miles, maybe. How far is it from you up in Michigan?
I think for our big road trip, we traveled 6,000 miles total. So it must be at least 20.
Yeah, it's long.
2,000 to 2,500. It was more than a 3-day drive for us.
Okay. Yeah, it's at least 2 because it's just really long. It's really, really far. So anyway, yeah, Rachel's coming to visit in June, and she's from the UK, and so she's coming to the US. And she says, we can't go there in June. And she's like, no, I'm just curious. Yeah. So if Missouri is here, let's go west. So west is that way for me, but Missouri and then Kansas, Nebraska, and then you get over. I mean, it's clear over here. Rachel, it's over here. Anyway, it's a long trip. It's not just something that we would do for a weekend road trip or anything like that. So we'd have to fly. That you mentioned how far things are earlier. Yes. And we're way over time. So guys, thanks for hanging in with us. We may actually have to do a part 2. We'll have to see. But there's 30 miles from the southern entrance, from Grant Village in Yellowstone to Old Faithful. And you're going 30 miles an hour. Let me see if I can pull up a map. I bet I can do that. Maps of Yellowstone. If you want to chat for just a second, or talk about maybe Mammoth Hot Springs for just a second, and I'll pull up the map.
One other thing about when you're traveling through Yellowstone is, even though the speed limit is 30 miles per hour, you might be going a lot slower because someone's probably seen a bison or something somewhere along the way and they've slowed down. So everyone behind them has to slow down and you have no idea what the holdup is. And then finally you pass by and you're like, oh, there's one single piece of wildlife over here that everybody wanted to see.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. All right. So Old Faithful is right here. Old Faithful area is right here. And so if I move things down, you can see Grand Teton is down here. So there's a lot of miles from here to here. I can't even find it. It's 22 miles. Allow 45 minutes, the map says, from the south entrance to West Thumb Geyser Basin. Mm-hmm. And then it says 17 miles to the Old Faithful Visitor Center. And then Madison Campground is up here where Matt and I stayed. And then you stayed over here in West Yellowstone.
Right.
So from the west entrance to Madison, it says it's 14 miles, allow 30 minutes, unless it's in the morning and the elk happen to be crossing the road here, mm-hmm. or the bison and you can't get across. And then Matt and I also stayed over here at Canyon Village, and there's a 12-mile road here. It says allow 30 minutes, and you don't tend to find a whole lot of wildlife here. This is where a lot of the fires went through, but you do find a lot in Hayden Valley, which is right here. The other thing, the other good place for wildlife is up here in Lamar Valley, and that's where we found most of our wildlife, was Lamar Valley.
We did too. My daughter says that was the best day of her life.
The best day of her life. Oh, that's adorable. Yes. That's awesome. Let's see. I wanted to talk about Slough Creek, and Slough Creek is right here at the top of the map, and it's close to Lamar Valley, but on the other side of the road. And there is a gravel road that goes out to Slough Creek Campground. There are no services out there, services like water or electricity. So it is dry camping, but it's a beautiful campground right on the creek. And there's so much wildlife out there. And I would definitely recommend for someone who likes camping and dry camping to, if you have the ability to go out and do that, to camp at Slough Creek. It's a really great and beautiful place. We like to drive out here and go to Trout Lake. There's a beautiful little lake out here called Trout Lake, and it's right here near Baronet Peak, but taking people out there a whole lot. So yes, I really enjoy that. And then you guys stayed up here at Gardner, you said.
Right.
And Mammoth Hot Springs. Do you want to tell me a little bit about Mammoth Hot Springs and your experience there?
Yes. This is what I really like about Mammoth Hot Springs, because there's a lot of different geyser basins right throughout Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they seem kind of similar. So if you go to two main geyser basins, one after another, they kind of lose their luster. I like to break them up a little bit. Uh-huh. Mammoth Hot Springs is, another geothermic basin, but it's so different from the other ones. I saw it once described as like a cave inside out, and I thought, what a good description of that. It is just like a cave inside out. So it looks different. It's like terrace steps, and they're colorful, and it's just very different. And so even though we'd already been to see geysers and hot springs earlier in the day, the kids were still very interested. I was still very interested. The husband was still very interested. It's great. Also a cool place because the elk like to come into town and hang out in the green spaces, especially in the evenings. Mm-hmm. So we got out and we walked around the town and we could see the elk, and that was really neat.
Yes. You mentioned something about feeding your kids in Mammoth Hot Springs?
We did. We don't eat out a whole lot,
Okay.
but we did eat out in Mammoth Hot Springs. We ate at the Terrace Grill, and it was good food. It was good service. My son had ordered the wrong thing, and I took it back up, and they were so nice about swapping it out. It was totally our fault, and they still fixed it, made it right for us.
Oh,
So that was really cool.
that is
But the other thing is the kids' meals come in these little souvenir cardboard boxes that are shaped like old historic yellow buses that people used to take for tours around Yellowstone. And the kids got to keep that. And what a cool souvenir for them.
Yeah,
and they
that
had
is
so much fun driving it around the boardwalks as we wandered through the terrace afterwards.
That's cool.
It was very cool.
I have a picture of the terraces so we can show our inside out cave.
Yes, show them the inside out cave.
It was really cool. I don't remember which terrace this is, but it just the colors and everything are just phenomenal, and I just love them. And this was one of the first places we actually experienced in Yellowstone was Mammoth Hot Springs. We ended up coming in, and we had a place to stay there. We were staying in the lodge there and little cabin, and we went up and got to see the terraces. Very first thing, we saw elk, but then we saw the terraces, and they were fairly impressive. I was trying to find a picture of elk, but that's all right. I'm not managing it. But Nerding for Nature is here. Hello. Thank you for coming, Carly. And and Flack Fam says meal and entertainment. Awesome.
Right, exactly.
Cool. And Nerding for Nature is one of our patrons on Patreon. So thank you for coming, Carly. I appreciate you being here. Man, there's so much to tell. Eating and sleeping were really cool. I do want to invite you guys over to see April's minivan adventures and her website and her information on traveling to Yellowstone. She travels with her kids and she writes about how family travels. And they go lots of places, not just national parks. They go to state parks. They go to, amusement parks. They go around the Midwest and around the country. And so that's been really cool to follow along with. And I appreciate all of that. We may have to do this again. But is there something that you would like, just some pro tips that you would like to give out for traveling to the area that you found before we sign off here, April?
Yeah. The biggest tips I would say would be allow plenty of drive time because you just don't know how long it's going to take to get from one area of the park to another. Hit the most popular places first. And I like to prepare my children ahead of time by reading to them about the places that we're going to go to before we go, or watching movies about those places or movies that are set in those places. That seems to make it more meaningful for my children, and then they're more likely to have a good time and complain less. Those are all important things for us.
Sure. And I guess my tips would be Matt and I find that fewer crowds and to get the most out of your experience with the fewest people in your pictures and in your memories, because let's face it, other people can ruin your memories. Hey, there was that person who got off the boardwalk and held their iPad up in front of the Old Faithful Geyser. We got to see her iPad. Wasn't that great? But yeah, so to avoid those, we go early in the morning. We're from the central time zone, so getting up for mountain time, is not that much harder. So you get up and you go early in the morning, and then we eat our big meal and take the most time in the afternoon, and then go out again in the afternoon, in the evening, when everybody else is headed out of the park or into the restaurants for those things. And I like to plug the National Park passports for souvenirs. You got yours with a dinner, but I collect passport stamps, and it keeps Matt from having to buy me things. Hey Matt, can I have a stuffed whatever? No. Hey Matt, can I have a go get your stamp? Okay, fine. So, yep. It's been wonderful talking to you about this, and I could talk to you for hours about Yellowstone and Grand Teton and traveling and all this stuff. Thank you so much for this suggestion, April. This has been wonderful.
It has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Kay.
Oh, yeah. And if you guys have any questions and you think about any questions that you have, please come back and leave them in the comments. And April and I will talk about them, and maybe she'll write a blog and write the answers to some of the questions that you all have. And that leads me to the next thing. Make sure you go over and check out April at her blog and connect with her on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Do you have Instagram as well?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Exactly. And I believe she even has a YouTube channel. And so, no YouTube.
No, I need to have you teach me how to make videos.
All right. We're going to have a video production class one of these days. But anyway, everybody go check out April. Tell her you found her on Happy Trails Hiking. For those of you folks who came into the chat today, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like button. Share this with someone else who travels to Yellowstone with families or might want to travel to Yellowstone with families.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, come back and leave a comment, because that'll let YouTube know that we're doing stuff that you like. And until next time, which will be Friday for me live, go out and live the life you love today. Spend time with your family. And remember, you are not replaceable.